good evening, Indiana. Welcome to a special presentation from Progressive Indiana Network. My name is Scott Rogers from the Who's Left podcast. I'm going to be your host here tonight. I am joined by Brad Meyer. This is the second one of our virtual town halls here together. Brad, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm glad you're here with us. I appreciate you doing these. I appreciate you speaking directly to the people of southern and southeastern Indiana here in the 9th District, asking for their votes, and we're asking for their questions. If you're watching on YouTube, on Facebook Live, or at progressiveindiana.net, feel free to ask questions for Brad right there in the chat. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, we can pull those right up on screen. If you're on progressiveindiana.net, I will have to type them in, but that's all good. Either way, we want to hear from you. So, Brad, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the good folks at home who don't know you already?
Sure. My name is Brad Meyer. I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives in the 9th District. I spent 25 years in manufacturing leadership roles here in Indiana, and then I worked for the last 9 years as a subject matter expert for the Navy as a civilian Navy employee. When Trump came to power and began really threatening our democracy, I decided that I had to quit my job and run for office. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I am a strong progressive, and I'm not going to talk too much about policies in this initial point because I'm hoping that those will come out during the course of discussion. But one of the differences, I think, between me and other candidates running, because there's 4 people running for this job. So we've got a primary in Cinco de Mayo. So please come out and vote. You need to pick the person that you think that is most likely to win. My argument is that we have been trying to play it safe, and we get more and more cautious every year. Our ideas get smaller, and we get more guarded, and we ask for less, and we end up playing defense, and we end up not making any progress on things that are important to progressives. We don't make a lot of progress on making things better for people. So we need to stand up for what we believe in, and we need to fight for it. And I think that we need to stop being timid, and we need to start really advocating for things that are going to make a difference in people's lives.
Very good. Well, thank you for your opening statements. And again, we're going to ask for questions there on Facebook Live, on YouTube, and at progressiveindiana.net. We welcome whatever you have to say. Brad would love to answer your questions, but until those start trickling in, I know folks are, streaming in slowly. That is fine. I do want to ask, since the last time we spoke, there have been incredible developments in foreign policy, especially with the joint U.S.-Israel attacks on Iran yesterday and continuing into today. And I guess I want to hear, and I'm sure the other people or the folks out there in the audience want to hear your thoughts on the use of force against Iran.
So, as is my way, I'm going to give a long answer, but I will try to be relatively brief, right? So the first issue is that, number one, the way this was done is wildly inappropriate. It's undemocratic. It's not in the best interest of the country to do this. When we've had major operations in the past, the president has gone to Congress and gotten at least some authorization from Congress because they felt that it was necessary. It's necessary because the American people have to be behind and understand why it's important to do such a thing. And the only reason that you wouldn't go to the American people is you don't want to know what they think. You don't care, and you're going to do it. And this is horribly anti-democratic. The second thing is that I knew this was going to happen 7 years ago, right? So Obama put a treaty in place, or negotiated a treaty with multiple people, our partners in the world community, and we kind of nudged them and pushed them to make concessions, and we nudged and pushed Iran to make concessions. And when we all got together, nobody really loved the deal, but it was the beginning of a diplomatic opportunity. When Trump came in, he pulled the plug on that. And when he pulled the plug on that, our partners in the West and in the developed world said, all right, we're done. This doesn't make any sense. We can't trust America to be the leader to negotiate things because we had to give concessions. We experienced all the political cost, and now we're going to get none of the benefit. And Iran looked at it and said, we can't trust anything that America says or does. So they don't have a partner that they can trust. Now, we obviously can't trust them. That's why there were things put in place for independent inspections. But when he pulled the plug on that, the only path to address the legitimate concerns and the legitimate danger that Iran represents is through force. And there's a good likelihood that if we had followed what Obama had put in place, that it would have failed and force would have been necessary. But when you pull the plug and you don't give it an opportunity, then you're using force as your first choice and your only choice. When all you think about is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and there's no patience. And what we're doing was set back when Trump pulled the plug 7 years ago.
All right. Well, thank you. So on YouTube, Christine asks, I don't know if she asks, Christine just says, healthcare. So I guess let's call that a healthcare wild card question, Brad, and see, you do with you will. I know what last time we were here, and maybe not everybody's watching that watched last time, I asked you about where you come down on, say, Medicare for all. Maybe you want to go there with it. Maybe you'd like to address drug prices, for example. Have at it.
So I will try to be brief. This is a big topic, and it's a really important one. I am a strong advocate for universal, nonprofit, single-payer healthcare, also known as Medicare for All. I am not a doctor, but I am a member of Physicians for a National Health Program. It's a good organization. I'd encourage people to take a look at it. They've been advocating, as have others, for a national health program for years. We die 4 years earlier in this country. We pay twice as much for our health care. 80% of people that carry medical debt have insurance. This system doesn't work. And 75%, 50 to 75% of people that declare bankruptcy have medical debt. We have double the infant mortality as other countries, similar countries. We have double the maternal mortality of other countries. We're losing our hospitals in Southern Indiana. We're losing obstetrics, and we're losing it. It is in the process of a significant decline from even where we're at. And when I talk about universal health care, people reactively say, oh, no, how will it be funded? Well, in the rest of the world, it takes half as much money, right? So if we get control of this, if we get control of the spending and we get a better system, it'll be less expensive, not more expensive.
So, Brad, I wanted to ask, one of the big things driving the healthcare is driving the affordability crisis. So I guess in addition to healthcare, what do you see as driving the affordability problem in this country, and how do we tackle the affordability problem in this country?
So if you step back and look at the big picture, our economic policies, our tax policies are favoring businesses and favoring big businesses and trying to suppress labor costs, which is us. Labor has not kept up. Pay has not kept up. In fact, especially for young people in 18 to 34-year-olds over the last couple of decades, the real salary has dropped by 20%. This is why young adults are so pessimistic about the future, because they see their pay going down, they see housing going up, they see other costs rising, and they're being squeezed, and we're all being squeezed. And the fact is that this is not an accident. This is not just the way it has to be. This is the result of decades of Republican policies of trickle down that's not working.
And I guess, well, I don't want to editorialize myself, but Democrats have, in many ways, since, say, the Clinton era, gone along with these Republican trickle-down policies. How do we, as Democrats, address that? Can you say, our bad, we did wrong, or do you just ignore it and bury it, you know?
Well, so what it really is it's special interests taking over the political process, right? And that's happened with Democrats and Republicans. The main issue that I have is that we have gotten so focused on maximizing business that we've taken our eye off the ball on what people need, right? That's why I'm advocating for a $20 an hour minimum wage. If you're working 40 hours a week, you should be able to put a roof over your head and feed your family. That's why I'm advocating that the first $20,000 of pay should be tax-free, completely tax-free. You know, and I don't even remember what the number is. It was so dumb I didn't even bother to remember it. That, you know, the poverty line is like what, $13,000-$14,000. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think that people making $20,000 are also struggling, right? And what we need to be looking at is we need to be looking at economic policies that take the majority of people and they open up opportunity. And right now, most of the opportunity is slanted up toward the wealthy, right? That's why so many people are angry at the billionaires, right? Because we have a system right now that it is more likely that we're going to get one more billionaire next year than it is that 50,000 people are going to make $20,000 more next year. We're going to more likely to get one more billionaire than to get 1,000 more millionaires, right? It is a system that is slanted. And that's why people are so angry, because they see the injustice, but the injustice is actually in the tax code. It's actually in our economic policies. It is in, you know, non-compete agreements that keep people from going out and being able to start their own businesses. It's in our healthcare policy that keeps people trapped in jobs instead of being able to leave. There are so many things that are just woven into this net that keeps us tied down.
All right. So, hey, we're starting to get some really good questions in here. And I wanted to go to Facebook Live, where Kevin asks, what distinguishes a progressive from other flavors of Democrats? And related, what's the biggest challenge as a Democrat in this district?
So I'll give you my definition, which is important because I call myself a progressive, and I believe I am. So there are people that are progressives, and what they really want to do is they want to make progress, right? And there are people that are populists, and the substantive difference between the two is a populist is somebody that says that those people are to blame, right? There's populism on the conservative side too, but when you're blaming a group, that is by definition populism, right? And what I'm interested in is progressive, and sometimes populists sometimes get frustrated with me, and if they just hang in for a minute, I think they'll like where I'm at, right? So I start from a position to say, what does a just society look like? What does a society look like that most people can feed their own family? We've got 14 million people, or 14 million families that are living with food insecurity. How do we fix that problem? And you look at what is the problem, how do we fix it, and what do we need to do to fix it? And as it turns out, we're going to have to increase taxes on the billionaires to do it. The difference between a progressive and a populist is a populist starts out saying, we need to tax these people. And a progressive starts with, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And if the answer is taxing these people, and if the problem is these people, then that is what we need to address. I'm starting with problems and working from there.
Okay. So I wanted to go to Progressive Indiana Network online there at progressiveindiana.net, where Hoosier Lemon, a friend of the pod, asks, let's go with this one first. This is another health quick care question. Lemon asks, what's your stance on negotiating prescription drug prices? Would you support such legislation? You talked about Medicare for All earlier. Would that be included in a Medicare for All proposal?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons I'm going to have to find a better way of describing it, because sometimes people get confused because I don't use Medicare for All, because there are now big holes and gaps and problems in Medicare that don't address things that we need. It doesn't address prescription drug prices as much as it needs. It doesn't cover addiction issues as well as it needs. It does not cover mental health issues as well as it needs. There's a lot, and it's not covering, frankly, the issues with disabilities as well as it needs. By the way, this month is Disabilities Awareness Month. So we'll have some information coming out on that. We do need to get a handle on prescription drug prices.
Okay. All right. Well, how? I guess. I guess, or until then, let's say, universal single payer healthcare is a bridge too far. Right now, it is something that we can't get across the finish line.
Right.
Short that, how do we handle prescription drug prices?
So there have been several initiatives. Biden came up with several and made some progress. There was some built into the Affordable Care Act. And I believe, although I have not seen it, I believe that Trump has also been involved in some of these negotiations as well. So it's been shown that Medicare, Medicaid can engage on these issues, and we need to change policies so that they can do more of that. And that's something we can do relatively quickly.
Yes. All right. Well, here is one on YouTube where Fantas Gray asks, is Brad in favor of getting money out of politics or publicly funding elections?
So it would be very nice if we could publicly fund elections. My concern with publicly funding elections is that right now it has been demonstrated that at least this administration will do anything that it can to undermine and undercut. And if that funding was federally controlled, he would find a way to keep me from getting money to run from office against him. I think he's going to try to find ways to keep you from voting for the person that you want, because he has the levers that he can try to do that. Right? He's already attacking ActBlue to try to keep money out of the pockets of people that oppose him. So publicly funding is a great idea. I can't trust the current administration to do it in a responsible way. And when you say, well, we could put it into the hands of an independent organization, like the Fed is an independent organization, we're seeing coercion and pressure on all of these. I think that we do need, to get big money out of the elections.
And so I guess, how do we do that? Currently, with the Supreme Court that we have, you've got Citizens United. That case is right there, and they say, well, money is speech, and you can't limit the amount of free speech people have, and they can spend as much as they want on elections. And there's various pass-throughs and PACs and super PACs and everything else by which folks influence elections through lots of concentrated money. How do we tackle that?
So if money is free speech, then why is it that people can only donate $3,500 to my campaign, right? That's a limitation on speech. So what it really is they've implemented limitations that profit them, not profit the other side. So I think that because of the Supreme Court, there's going to be struggles, but we need to fight against that, and we need to put legislation through that will limit what corporations can put into a campaign, directly and indirectly.
Okay. So I want to go back to progressiveindiana.net and back to Hoosier Lemon, who had another good question. And Lemon asks, do you support paid family leave?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, then I will follow up.
Okay.
How we going to make it happen?
So every time we, as a government and as a country, put a policy in place like the Americans with Disabilities Act, going back to its Disabilities Month. When we put the American Disabilities Act, industry swore up and down that it was going to wreck our economy. And after they put it in place, turns out it didn't wreck the economy, and we had an economic boom after that, right? So I am always it is important that we help to stimulate and grow small businesses. And we need to be mindful of the burdens we place on small businesses. But we also need to understand that things happen in people's lives, and there needs to be some way to bridge that. And some of that has been covered through insurance. Some of it has been covered in some countries through government systems. I am open to good ideas and solutions. So next time, Hoosier Lemon, when we're in a room, let's talk about what you think would be the right answer. There are options, and I would be in favor of it. We need to do things that'll help people be able to continue their career and be able to deal with things as they come up in their lives.
So again, we could use some questions from Facebook, from YouTube, from progressiveindiana.net. Would love to hear more from the folks that are out there. But for right now, I'm going to keep things moving along. And, first time we did one of these, Brad, we talked about California Governor Gavin Newsom, who seems at this point to be sort of the leader in the clubhouse for Democrats for 2028. Now, at that point, we were talking about a wealth tax. And that was something that maybe he says he can get behind at the federal level, but not so much at the state level because he's afraid of Capitol flight. Well, Mr. Newsom was also back in the news this past week. He did a lengthy interview on CNN. I think he's selling a book or something. But Newsom said something controversial regarding Democrats' cultural values. He said that Democrats need to be, quote, culturally normal. Referring to maybe abandoning identity politics and focusing on kitchen table issues. But I think a lot of folks view this as throwing marginalized communities under the bus. So let's what do you think about Mr. Newsom's comments? I don't know if you saw them, but what do you think about that?
I saw a thing this week that I thought was really interesting, right? And it was talking about the concentric circles of, and I can't remember what term they used, of how you define who you care about and what you care about, right? And it starts with you, and then your family, and then your extended family, and then your community, and further out. And I think what the challenge here in Southern Indiana is that we need to explain many of the things we care about to people that view things differently and have different, I'm not going to say values, but I would say priorities and focus on what is in their central vision, right? So the environment is something that I care about. there are other people that are not near as moved by that. And we have to be able to explain and frame for them why that is important, right? We have to be able to explain, and I know that it's frustrating to many people, but we have to explain to them why LGBTQ rights are important to them if they don't have a family member. One of the things I found really interesting, and it's a really good example, is I've met a lot of people that are wearing pride buttons and stickers. And when I talk to them, they say, I didn't pay any attention. And then my child came out. And I realized they are us, right? And I think we need to do a good job, or a better job maybe, of communicating that sense of community and why it should matter to them. And that doesn't mean we stop caring. It just means I think we need to reach out and communicate in a way that resonates with them.
So I guess along those lines, Brad, I had one of your primary opponents here last week, and I think Newsom got some pushback at the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the Trump administration, he had his podcast. He had Charlie Kirk on. He had Steve Bannon on. He had Ben Shapiro on. He had, a lot of these right-wing figures. And he was criticized for throwing the trans community under the bus, essentially. And your primary opponent last week gave a very conservative type of answer when asked this same question. And I'm going to pose it to you exactly the same way. So if I can find it up here. Should transgender individuals be able to update their government-issued IDs to match their gender expression? We're seeing in Kansas right now, their state legislature, I don't know if it was the legislature or the governor through an executive order, but their Bureau of Motor Vehicles essentially revoked every transgender person's state-issued ID if they had changed it from their, quote-unquote, sex at birth. So how would you, at the federal level, like to see this handled?
So, short answer, which is unlike me, is yes, they should be allowed to update their government-issued IDs. And this is why. What is the purpose of an ID? If you are stopped and they need to identify who are you, right? That picture and that information needs to match what they see, not what's covered by the swimsuit. Right. So, and the other thing is it's just it's intentional attempt to control and restrain their expression. And it doesn't affect me what's on their license. Their ID needs to be effective to identify them, to let you know whether the person driving that car is the person that is giving you the ID. And I think that this is a real attempt to just stir up hate and discontent.
I think so, too. You don't drive a car with your genitals, and if you are, that's probably more of a cause for concern and unsafe driving than anything else going on there. So, I wanted to go back to progressiveindiana.net, where Hoosier Lemon's got all the good questions tonight. And Lemon asks a good one here. How would you work to address the affordable housing crisis? Would you support legislation that bans the sale of residential properties to private equity investors? And then I will follow up by asking, is there more of a role for public housing? We used to do more public housing and got away from it. Maybe the way we used to do it wasn't great. Is there a public option for housing that we should be pursuing? A lot there, and I'll let you have it.
Okay. So housing affordability. The federal government has limits in their power. And what the federal government has limits in is interstate commerce, right? So unfortunately, if you are a private equity investor and you do not cross outside of the Indiana borders, federal government has limits on what they can impose on that investor. I do think that we have the ability to impose limits on companies and investors that cross state boundaries, right? So you can't have somebody from New Jersey buying up 500, well, you can right now. Somebody from New Jersey right now maybe can buy up 500 houses here in Indiana that are supposed to be for single family dwellings, right? And for single family dwellings, I think that there should be a cap on that. And the cap is like, pick a number, no more than 10. And there should be a way that over time that they have to divest out of that. It is not in the best interest for single family dwellings to be owned as a business. Now, I will say that my wife and I, when we moved down here, we were having trouble selling our house and we had to rent our house out, right? There are people that I know that own a couple of homes and they do that as a small business. And that's different than private equity investors. That's different than big corporations. And I think we need to constrain that. Now, you were asking about the public housing, right? If you go, fun fact, if you go back and look at the last 120 years of housing history, which I've done, you will find that in the, and it wasn't just coming out of, it was coming out of World War II, and part of it was a GI Bill, but there were other reasons as well, that there was a surplus of houses. And the reason there was a surplus of houses is that builders knew that if you look at the number of homeowners today and the frictional change where I've got a house and I'm going to sell it, I'm going to buy a new one, that would not support an excess of housing. But they did know that more and more people were coming into the housing market and they overbuilt. And then that was absorbed in the next year and then they built more. And because of that, it kept housing prices down. And a lot of that was fostered by economic policies that the United States government put in place, not just for veterans, but just generally speaking for housing. And that worked very well. Starting in the mid 70s, they changed their those policies. And you can see a long period decay where we now have a housing shortage. The real solution is actually to build millions of additional homes on top of what the current stock is. We have a shortage of housing. And to do that, we're going to need additional labor, which means we're going to need additional immigration, legal immigration, in order to help with the housing problem. There are also problems with speculation, which you talked about, that need to be addressed. Housing, there are several issues that affect housing, but the main one is on affordability is interest rates and housing stock. And housing stock is at historic lows as percentages, and that is the reason that we're struggling so much.
So what I'm hearing is the right likes to make this argument that, oh, the immigrants are taking all the houses. They're living in the houses, even though they also criticize them for living like 20 to a house, right? So what you're saying is, no, we actually need immigrants to solve the housing problem by building the housing.
Absolutely.
All right. So got another good question here on YouTube. Back to Fantas Gray, who says, at the end of the Obama presidency, Republicans used brute strength bullying tactics to stop Obama from appointing a Supreme Court justice. Are you willing and able to fight back against such behavior? And I guess I would follow up by asking, are you willing, as a Democrat, to engage in such behavior to help balance things out if necessary?
I wish it weren't necessary, but it's necessary. We are outside of the Reagan, Tip O'Neill environment. We lost a real strong Democrat, and I think his funeral is going to be on 4/20 this year. But the Lee Hamilton age is gone. And this is why I am more activist because there's a lot of people that says, well, we need to be more easygoing. We need to try to get along. And right now, we don't have reliable partners on the other side that we can talk through and have a reasoned debate and come up with a principle. They are trying to steal the land under our feet, and we have just got to stand up to it and stop it.
All right. Very good. Well, you know what? I think along those lines, actually, you talked about going along to get along. And, Kevin asks on Facebook, I think a related question. And boy, that's a long one that's taken up half the screen. But Kevin says this district went something like 64 to 32 in favor of Republicans last go around. Yep. You're touching on the challenges of framing and explaining our values in Southern Indiana. Is the path to winning this seat through moderate swing voters? Through motivating non-voters? We've seen some high-profile flips of deep red seats on the national level. What, if any, signs are you seeing that something comparable is possible here? And normally I like to leave these questions up for a little bit, Kevin, but I can't barely see Brad's face, so I'm going to take this thing off here for a while and ask your thoughts on, what the path is to winning this district.
This is the central issue of this primary, which again is on Cinco de Mayo. There's 4 of us running, and we all have different answers to this problem. My answer is that we need to give voters a choice. And I don't remember if I talked about this the last time. When Trump was in the primary, the first time he ran, I was at a dentist's office, and there was a guy watching the TV. I don't know who he was, and he was just making conversation. He went, I don't know whether I want to vote for Trump or I want to vote for Bernie Sanders. And I said, you realize that they are diametrically opposed. And he's like, yeah, but I want change. And my answer is that the Democrats have better answers. We've tried the Republican solutions. We've seen how far that will go and where it does and doesn't take us. And some people say, well, we need to reach across the aisle and we need to be more like them and adopt their ideas or try to be more mild. And I think what we really need to do is we need to reach across the aisle and take them by the hand and explain to them and walk them through the logical argument of why our solutions are better and get them on our side instead of us trying to snuggle up to them. That, giving them options, giving them an alternative vision that will help them and their families, that's the only way we're going to win. We're going to win by persuading them. We're not going to win by auditioning to be one of them.
And I guess I'm going to go back to what Kevin asked here, because there were multiple parts. What about non-voters? I think you're saying that Democrats need to be more authentic and less like trying to be like Republicans to catch, soft or moderate Republicans and be more authentic. Are you suggesting that also would appeal more to folks that don't normally come out?
Yes. And, the issue is that when we as Democrats try to be more mild and we try to soften and make smaller what we're advocating for, the best we can offer, because we're only playing defense, the best we can offer is that next year will probably only suck about as much as as last year if you vote for us. There's no reason for somebody to get off the couch and go vote if we don't inspire them with things that really will affect their lives in a positive way and that are achievable. Yes, I have some policies that are big swings. And do I expect to get them in the first year? Probably not. But we need to be working toward it. We need to be fighting for it. We need to be advocating for it. If we're not in there fighting to make things better, then we're just going to get more of what we got last year. And I think it is odd or unfair that we complain that we have very low voter turnout in Indiana, and we don't give them a choice.
Indeed. And I want to not editorialize and not add my comments here. I want to hear what the people have to ask on Facebook, on YouTube, on progressiveindiana.net. We've got a little bit of time left, so we still want to hear more questions from you all. Go ahead and get those in, put them right in the chat there. And Brad, you got blurry all of a sudden. Maybe it's me. I haven't had a drink.
It's not just you.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Well, you know what? We can still hear you. We can see you well enough. I did want to ask that there was a focus group in the New York Times. It wasn't this past week, but it was the week before. And to a T, every Democrat that they spoke to said they preferred the progressive to the moderate. You've already said where you come down in that camp, and I think your answers have also basically gone to show that. Another thing that those folks asked in this focus group was to describe the Democratic Party in one or two words. The folks in the focus group weren't too terribly kind. I'd like to hear what you, as a Democrat, have to say about the state of the party in just a word or two.
Rebuilding. I see a lot of rebuilding going on right now in the Democratic Party. If you look at Harrison County, I just got back last night. I went to a dinner party. There were 200 Democrats there. It was a wonderful turnout. Brown County, Jackson County. There's a lot of. We had up in Ripley County. We had a bunch of people. Down in Jefferson County, there's some things really happening now, and I rebuilding.
That is far more gracious answer than I think any of those folks at the New York Times had to say about the state of the party. So very well played, sir. I want to go back to our friend Fantas Gray over on YouTube, who has a very good question. Asks, what kind of steps are being taken at polling stations to combat against possible interference shenanigans? Now, elections are administered locally at the county level. So, there's, I guess you may not be able to speak to what kind of steps are being taken, and that should be taken up with your local election administrators. But I guess, what can you as a candidate and your campaign do to help secure the vote in November?
Sorry for the delay. I just switched cameras. I don't know what happened to my other camera. So as a candidate, one of the things that we need to do is help to get out the vote. We need to help people understand what the limitations and risks are. We need to encourage people to vote, and we need to have a message that inspires them to get out and vote. Right? One of the things that they're counting on is apathy and continued apathy. And as a candidate, the candidate needs to give something worth getting off the couch for and worth fighting for.
All right. Fantastic. And I what I hear from folks is that we have to make this turnout too big to rig.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, and if you give me a moment, I'm going to type this in here, but and while I take away this comment here, so if the Democrats retake the House, if we avoid these elections shenanigans that we're talking about, and we have when Democrats retake the House this year, who do you support for Speaker of the House? And I'm probably misspelling Hakeem Jeffries' name in this situation here, and I want to put this up on the screen, but when Democrats retake the House, would you vote to make Hakeem Jeffries, the current minority leader, Speaker, or do you think somebody else would be a better leader of the Democratic caucus in Congress?
I think Mr. Jeffries has done some good work with a very difficult hand under the current administration. I don't know. I don't know if there is not a better candidate. I honestly, I have not thought too much about who should be in leadership. I know that it's not going to be me as a freshman. So I'll take that up. I'll think seriously about that in December.
Okay. Calling here for just a few more questions while we have, maybe about 10 minutes or so, maybe a little bit more than that left before we have to start wrapping up here tonight. So please, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, if you're watching us on progressiveindiana.net, we'd still love to have a few more questions from you while we still have time. While we're waiting on those, I do want to go back to one that I had teed up that I don't know if I got a chance to ask you last week. So, one of the things we've talked about is the sort of log jam in Congress and the anti-democratic features baked into the Constitution that sort of allow Republicans to dominate from a minority position. They're less popular, but because of the number of large rural small population states they control, they are overrepresented, particularly in the Senate, but in the House through gerrymandering and things like that as well. Mm-hmm. Would you support efforts to make DC and or Puerto Rico states to sort of balance out that anti-democratic lean built into the system?
I would be open to Puerto Rico becoming a state, but I would not be doing it from a perspective of trying to balance Republican versus Democrat. Puerto Rico has been a territory for many, many years. They're U.S. citizens. There's issues in Puerto Rican administration, and as American citizens, I think they're not being well served as being a protectorate or a territory. I don't remember which. Honestly, I'm sorry for you Puerto Ricans for not being.
I believe it is a commonwealth.
Is it Commonwealth? Okay. All right. So given their current status, I guess a smart person would have just worked around it. I think their current status does not serve them well. And if they were interested in statehood, I think that it's something that should be really considered. As a separate issue, I struggle with what the right answer is to address the other issues that you're talking about. I think that gerrymandering, you could make an argument that there could be an attempt at a federal law that makes gerrymandering illegal and as an undemocratic principle. I don't know how much support that would get, but I would be inclined to vote for something like that and advocate for it as well.
All right. Fantastic. So, I wanted to ask another one. Where'd it go? Let me get that one out of there and go back to progressiveindiana.net and Hoosier Lemon, who's had just a great night tonight. Probably second only to Brad in terms of good quality content here this evening. So Lemon asks, would you support a ban on congressional stock trading? This was brought up the other night at the State of the Union. Trump pitched this idea. It's not his idea. It's been pitched before. Certainly, Elizabeth Warren was a big fan of this idea, gave him a standing ovation. It was one of the few times Democrats actually stood up last Tuesday night. Do you agree with those Democrats who stood?
I do. I think that mutual funds, I think, are a reasonable thing. I think that they should be able to invest their money, but they should not be able to invest in individual stocks or even in particular sectors, because even that sector stocks could be manipulated through Congress.
And yes, we suspect that they have. If you look at some of these stock trackers that show how much better the average congressional member performs versus, say, the S&P. it certainly appears shady. I want to go back to Facebook here. On the last one just came in. We haven't really talked about education yet. And Katie Scheffler asks, what are your ideas on making college more affordable?
So so college is much less affordable than it was decades ago. The cost of college has gone up by a factor of 10 since 1970, and that is adjusted for inflation. The debt load that people carry are up by 50% in the last 20 to 30 years. And one of the big burdens that people have, having said that, and the starting salaries are lower than they were, in the long run, it's still a good investment. It has still shown itself to be a good investment. The people that are really hurt are usually the people that get a year or two into college and find out it's not for them, and they have all of the debt and they have none of the benefit of the degree with the higher earnings. One of the things that has been suggested, and I think it's a good idea that we really need to consider, is for people that are qualified, make the first year free. You go to college, you're qualified, you get in there and you decide this is not for me, then you're not burdened with that additional debt. That'll actually help a significant number of people that are carrying college debt that don't have the college degree and the higher earnings that it confers. That's one thing. Another thing is the percentage of the college costs that are covered by the state and by the government has dropped dramatically. That's why it's 10 times more expensive. When I was going to college, baby boomers invested in college education, mine and everybody else's, like they invested in roads and bridges and water treatment plants. It was part of the investment in the future and in the community. Now we treat it like a private good, where if you want to go to college, then all the cost has to be absorbed by you. The state, the government, the people are not going to help you get that footing, and that all has to be carried on your back. And this is hugely unfair, and it's a burden that previous generations did not have since the 1930s.
College affordability really went down the crapper after Reagan, I want to say, really put a sticker in the student loan program. Like, the student loans weren't really much of a thing until Reagan came along, and then that program just expanded and expanded and expanded. I want to go back to Fantas on YouTube there, who asks, are you taking any donations from any PACs or super PACs?
Not at this time. And we talked about this, I think, last time. So there are some things that I'm an advocate for. I'm a strong advocate for universal nonprofit healthcare. I don't think that it is unfair or untoward for an organization that is in favor of that to donate to my campaign, because I'm aligned with that, right? I'm not going to take any money from APAC. I don't agree with all of their positions. It would be nice if I could just live off of small donations. But the fact is that there is an enormous war chest right now that the Republicans have. And in fact, I think 50%, maybe more, of Aaron Houchin's money is coming in from out of state. So I cannot afford to just walk away from being able to build a war chest to get into office to make a difference. If in the future I'm in there and we can put policies in place and laws in place that limit donations from PACs and super PACs, I think that makes sense. But right now, we have to be practical, and we have to find people that think and view things like us and get them to donate so that we can win.
Yeah, and we should just, state for the record that PACs and super PACs in and of themselves don't really mean anything. I guess it's the money in the organization behind the PAC or the super PAC. And
Yeah.
you spoke about one, you spoke about APAC and mentioned it by name. So I want to go to Holly on Facebook, who has a very long question here. And she says she strongly believes that all candidates should be protesting and actually showing their constituents that they care about the things that affect them. I know you are a candidate that shows up and stands beside constituents in this manner. However, and I think she may have come in late here, can you candidly tell us your thoughts about the recent conflict with Iran? I guess we'll finish where we started here, and then also your thoughts about the genocide happening in Gaza. And I'm going to take this one off the screen again because it's taking up half the screen.
So we talked earlier about my process issues with what's happening with Iran. It's being done in a legal way that does not bring the American people in and get buy-in for something that's going to put people in harm's way. And we've already lost some service members. And I think there needs to be a real discussion. There should have been a real discussion and debate over whether we want to engage in a war in the Middle East again. There's a lot of people that have spent time in service that would have real thoughts and opinions and feelings on whether this makes sense. And I've talked about the limitations that that Trump put that have put us on this path, that it was really the only option. Having said that, the Iranian government has been saying for 45 years, death to America, and that's exactly what they've given us. They've given us support to Hezbollah that killed Americans in Beirut when I was in college. They've given us support to Hamas and encouraged Hamas to make that disastrous decision to attack Israel, and the result has been devastation. That was brought to you in part by the Iranian government that wanted to sow problems and discontent. They bear some responsibility for encouraging Hamas and supporting Hamas in that disastrous attack. They supported, and this didn't get as much press, and I put something out on this recently, they supported the Houthis in Yemen that were firing missiles and drones at American sailors last year or the year before. They were trying to kill Americans. Okay, there is a real reason that there needs to be a change. Something needs to be done. I wish that they would not have taken diplomatic methods off the table the way Trump did. I would have preferred to see us work through that with a little bit more patience, have discussion, and then when and if diplomacy failed, then we might have to take action, but only with congressional approval, the way it's been done in the past. The way this has been done has been horrible. On the issue of Palestine, it is gut-wrenching to see the videos and the pictures and read the reports of what is happening in Palestine. The only way that we can get past this continued cycle of violence is through a two-state solution. The United States should be advocating, and with our ally, Israel, for a two-state solution. But right now, there is no interest or appetite based on Netanyahu's. He also views things, he's got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And it's going to lead to cycles of violence and repression and temporary truce, and then more violence and repression. They're not on a path to a sustainable peace. And that is in everybody's best interest.
All right. Well, Brad, we are coming up on an hour, so let's go ahead and wrap up. Where can folks learn more about you, more about your campaign? If they like what they hear tonight, how can they help out with their time, talent, or treasure? And if they didn't like what they hear tonight, where can they tell you off?
Well, so you can get a lot of good information and details at bradmeyer.org, which is, I believe, on your screen. We have done already 8 town halls. This is the second virtual town hall. We have 6 more town halls confirmed, and you can find that on our Facebook and on our webpage, which is Brad Meyer for Indiana. We're planning 4 more on top of the 6 that are already confirmed. We are engaged with 6 debates. We are going everywhere. We're going to every county that we can. We're reaching out in rural areas as well as the population centers.
All right. What was the website's on the screen there? But for the folks who are going to be listening to this at the podcast,
bradmeyer.org.
where can they find you?
bradmeyer.org. Brad Meyer, Meyer, no S.
All right. Thank you very much, Brad. And thank all of you for joining us tonight and for your thoughtful questions. We appreciate it. We're going to do another one of these in about 4 weeks. So we'll see you then. Brad, I'll see you Thursday here in Bloomington at the BDSA Candidate Forum. But until then, thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks.